All right, not too many surprises there. Legacy obviously taking it out there for game number 2. Rusty, in a situation like this, you need to look for the little bright spots, and we could say that Puma is one of those bright spots.
Yeah, I think Puma's also been one of the bright spots for most of the year, you know? Like he definitely is someone that has impressed in his individual moments, and this game was one of those drafts where he had to. And I think he did. It's just that the game against Legacy, they had 2 tier stacking champions, so they're meant to be weak in the early game. We're just like 2,000 gold ahead at 6 minutes. So that's one of those games where really that happens. You're 6 minutes in, you're like, all right, put a bow on it. The game's over. Go next. But somehow we got to 36 minutes. And that's honestly an impressive thing for our 1-15 team in the league, Nick, to be able to get to that point against Legacy.
Are you seeing pieces of Gravitas that you can build around for next split for them?
I mean, I feel like they have pieces. A lot of teams have had pieces, and it's about the infrastructure for me that actually builds them into a cohesive unit. So, like, I could look at Gravitas and say individual players have potential. Like, even some of their bench players, right? Like, Kwaku is definitely someone that comes to mind. Has potential as a player, but disappeared in the roster of Gravitas. And
totally.
My questions then go a little bit beyond just the players themselves, Nick, to how they're building those improvements.
Spawn, you can jump in here if you'd like. The disappearance of Kwaku, I feel like, could be a mystery in the OPL, some sort of detective novel, because it was like he was around, he was making some noise, he was a bit of a fan favorite and was playing some good games, and then suddenly just got swallowed up into this 15-man mass and then disappeared.
Yeah, I think the thing with Kwaku was that he was a really good blind pick tank player, and now they're much easier to punish with things like Kale emerging. And then, at the same time, his counter picks were really niche counter picks, and they were hard carry counter picks. His counter picks are like Fiora, Alawi, like these kinds of champions, right? And I think that they've gone so heavily towards playing Suman on supportive style champions because he's getting target banned a lot that they needed a carry top laner. And I think they feel like nobody fits a niche a little bit better. I kind of like... I always struggle with this question, right? Because as a GM, if I inherited the Gravitas roster, like what would I do? Like I don't know the players all that well, so I can't make a call. But it seems like to me that the only players you have with genuine carry potential is probably Prayless. And he plays, in my opinion, the hardest utility role in the game. Like I think jungle right now is more utility than it's ever been before in the past. So that to me is actually the real struggle of the lineup, is how do you make like this pentagon-shaped team fit into what is normally the triangle peg of a League of Legends team. I'd have to leave that one up to Jasper because he seems to be able to get shapes stuck everywhere. But I personally don't know how I would tackle it.
All right, well, they've got plenty of time to tackle it in the off-season, which is approaching after the grand final, which is rapidly coming towards us, and something we're very excited about. We're also very excited about the NeoSurf competition that we've got running within the show. NeoSurf want to give you $500 if you win first place, or $100 for the runners-up, and they want to put your video of you joining our opening title sequence into the OPL.
Over my bit.
Over Spawn's bit is something that Spawn says that no one listens to, apparently. Full terms and conditions of the competition are on watch.lollyspots.com. You just need to take a video of yourself joining our phone call, DM it to @OPL, follow NeoSurf Esports on Twitter, bada boom, bada bang. You could be in with a chance for some NeoSurf voucher credits. So thank you very much to the wonderful NeoSurf. On to now. Had a look at I'm just going to say it, some of the worst teams in League of Legends in OPL at the moment. Now let's move on to some of potentially the best champions in all of League of Legends, because it is the LCK, it's the League Champion Knockout, and this is the Bilgewater Edition.
The sun's out, the crowd's ready. Let's wreck it!
Only 2 jokers in the deck, and I get dealt you.
Watch your mouth, or I'll slap the soul out of you.
Oh, the punching gloves around Twisted Fate was a very nice touch. A very nice touch. It is the LCK. It is the Bilgewater Edition. It is, first up, Fizz versus Gangplank. As we take... There you go, it's that easy.
There's just no way you should pick Fizz. I don't even care if someone else picks Fizz. It's wrong. Gangplank's the best. That's it.
I agree. I actually think Gangplank has like some of the best depth in League of Legends, and it was like I'm going to get like really flamed for this, but I think that the way that they tried to revive Gangplank's storyline and the fact that they made him unplayable when they did so was actually some of the best storytelling that League of Legends tried to do. So I'm going to go with Gangplank as well.
As a note, Nick, you know how when someone has a bald head, the question can be raised on where their hairline starts and their forehead ends?
Yes.
Gangplank has the opposite problem, right? He has so much hair on his body, we're not sure where the beard ends and the chest hair starts. And that continues down the man.
Very interesting. And then this, of course, in comparison to Fizz, nary a hair on that body. Completely hairless. This is not a very fair matchup because you even just look at the pictures and it's just like, which one would win the segment called League Champion Knockout? And it's just, I mean, there's no chance. Let's take a look. I mean, Gangplank 75% of the vote. Congratulations, Gangplank. You win this one. Fizz, get out of here. Of course, a quick reminder to everyone watching, the way that this works is that we are storming towards picking the greatest League of Legends champion of all time, as chosen by OPL. When champs get eliminated, they not only get eliminated from the competition, they get eliminated from the game. So I hope you enjoyed playing Fizz, because you're not going to anymore. Next up, it's Graves versus Alawi. What do we like? See, this looks like, at least physically, a fairer matchup.
I would go with my boy Malcolm. I think that Graves' Twisted Fate is like turning into actually like a Lenton storyline from the League of Legends perspective, and he reminds me of like a Wolverine type character, right? Where he's like a little bit of a badass, but with good intentions, and has like this punk of a friend that he hangs out with, and you don't really know why the friendship dissolved. I get drawn in by stuff like that, and then you also look at him, and he's just a very attractive man. So I would go with Graves.
It feels like you're describing our friendship right up until the point that you ruined the Lakers game for me today. Because it's like there's just this good-looking guy who hangs out with this person who said something that really made him upset, and then blah, blah, blah. Rusty.
I feel like Graves, I like Graves, but there's something about Alawi, you know? And I don't hate Alawi, and so I don't know how to choose.
You don't hate Alawi.
Just good.
You obviously have never played a melee top laner into Alawi. That champion is just anti-fun.
Catch me dodging if it's top lane matchup. Spawn?
Yep.
Very simple man.
Also, I like that you were like, I like Graves, I don't hate Alawi. So that's all of the context that I have. I mean, if I was you then, I would say lean towards who you like, not who you don't dislike as much as you thought you would have.
I've discovered, Nick, that I like this entire region of the game.
Oh, interesting.
From what we've said so far, because I know Twisted Fate Graves' story is a fantastic story to read as well. That's one of the latest ones that came out. A big fan of them, and Misfortune.
Well, chat is kind of having the same issue with you. The vote's been going back and forth, but Graves is just eking it out now with 56% of the vote. So we're going to give it to Graves. Congratulations. And I feel like even Rusty can get on board with that, because he likes Graves. He just doesn't dislike Alawi as much as he thought he did. All right, up next, it's Misfortune versus Nautilus. For me, this one is easy, but I feel like this one could be a showdown.
Naughty's good though.
Naughty's good. The idea of just is there anything in the suit?
Eyes. I don't know. Maybe there's just two spotlights and a tiny brain. He was the statue that we did in Oceania as well for the first ever Ocean Week that we released. So there's a soft spot with Nautilus, I will say, as a Oceanic broadcast.
Also, that cinematic where Graves is dying, and then he just punches a grenade into Nautilus, and then how can you not like that? In saying that, I think Misfortune has evolved into a really kick-ass character. And what was just initially a typical pretty girl being injected into a video game, now ever since they did that cinematic where she had the spider and the glass, and then she turned into a bit of a badass, and they've released a new one with TF, and you see her personality coming out even more. I think that Misfortune's depth in her character creation shows that video games as a whole are heading in the correct direction. So I'll vote for that.
That is, the social justice vote as well. I love it. I'm on board with everything you just said, and I agree. I think Misfortune as well is my default voting thing, which is iconic character to the game. I feel like we can't get rid of it this early. And Chad agrees 54%. We nearly need to jump into the last game. So this last one, we're up to the last pick.
Twisted Fate.
Okay, it's Pike versus Tahm Kench versus Twisted Fate.
Twisted Fate.
Oh god,
Twisted
Fate's
Fate.
the best.
You're getting rid of Tahm Kench.
Yeah, Tahm sucks.
You're ditching
Pike's an
Tahm
edgelord,
Kench.
so he's not even in the conversation.
No, Pike can get out of here.
TF.
Good lord, I cannot believe it. Okay, well, there you go. The winner is Tahm Kench. No, the winner is Twisted Fate. Congratulations, Twisted Fate. So your winners were Twisted Fate, Misfortune, Graves, and Gangplank. That was the build-to-order edition of the LCK. It's time to jump into the OPL now. It is Direwolves versus Mammoth. Mammoth, last week, absolutely shattered me on Friday. Redeemed themselves on Saturday, or maybe it was Saturday, but they didn't even redeem themselves. It was just that Direwolves lost, and that's all I needed. But now Direwolves are going up against Mammoth. Mammoth need to win this to continue moving on. My room can't take any more destruction, so let's see what happens. Direwolves versus Mammoth. Call me crazy. I think Mammoth can do it. Let's jump into the game number 3 with the Maccas Champ Select.
Mammoth, they are Kingslayers a little bit. 2 weeks ago they beat Legacy and Chiefs back to back, but we're not Kings, so they're not going to be slaying anyone this week. I think they've been playing a lot better than before, but we should be able to take the win.
This is just an absolute spanking, Skippy. We're not seeing anything right now, but Direwolves just in absolute control.
Direwolves will find a victory to open up Friday.
Recently, Mammoth have kicked their only good player, Chungi, so, I gotta win for Chungi.
I don't know who is this, so...
GX is kind of a wild card, no one really knows his champion pool yet because he's only played 1 week and he plays a really heavy roaming style, so I think it'll be an interesting opponent for me, definitely not the normal mid laners.
This week you verse Mammoth and you have to take on Mbomber in the bot lane. How do you think Mbomber's gonna go? Do you think Mbomber's really good?
Just a Heimerdinger.
Direwolves is a pretty strong team. I think they're probably one of the top 3. I hope we can come out with a win just to make other people not get into playoffs. So yeah, hopefully we can take someone else down with us.
So tonight we play off against Direwolves. They're a really strong team with a bunch of really strong players, so it's definitely going to be a hard game for us. Last time we played was a bit of a quick game, so hopefully this time we can put in a bit more of a showing and maybe come away with a win.
I think Direwolves are quite a strong team despite their recent losses in the OPL. I'm hoping that we can bring things together this week and hopefully upset them.
So we're going up against Direwolves today. I think Direwolves are the strongest roster right now. I think the jungler Miri is probably the best by far.
And here we go for our 3rd game of the day, as I'm now joined by the lovely Rusty as we kick off Mammoth taking on Direwolves. And, it's still up to play for, right? You heard it there of them saying, well, we just want to take somebody down with us. There is still a chance for them to make it through to playoffs. There are still 5 games to go. Yes, there are a few games lagging behind those that are currently in a playoff spot. But there is still hope, and as you heard also, the last game that went their way was a 24-minute game where we had a Talia Pantheon bot lane. So my question really has to be then, will we see innovation, or will we see something maybe a little bit more stack standard come out here today?
I was going to say, someone's got to go and tell Bass that they're still in this race. They're not eliminated from playoffs. Why bring someone down with you? Trade places. Direwolves are currently 8-8 right now, holding the 5th place spot to get in. Just run the gauntlet. 5 games left, 5 wins, get yourself the 5th spot. It's all coming up 5s.
Number 5 is a special number, and one that we'll get to see here on 10.15. That was a really terrible segue, but we're going to run with it anyway, because I had to. We're going to see Caitlyn back-to-back. Yes, I know, Rusty, very disappointing. We're going to see the Caitlyn come back in here today with some very top-heavy AD-style gameplay, as the Azir has been locked in here in the mid lane as well. And one thing we have to say is welcome back to Chungy. GDX had his little fun in the sun. But the big man has come back, and I think Shock highlighted it beautifully. He likes to play things that are off meta, but primarily, the guy just likes to roam.
Time for Ari. That's what we want. It's probably not. We'll see how he does play this one out, though. The thing with Chungy, for those who may not have seen him every week, is he has a very specific champion pool. He is against an Azir right now, so he's got the known quantity of his opponents, and there has been no mid lane bans thrown at him. In fact, as per Vital's comments, Skibby, in things that Mboma can play, they already took away the Heimerdinger and the Ezreal, forcing him onto something that is maybe less familiar for him. But like you mentioned already, the Caitlyn going to be seen twice in a row. So definitely curious to look at Chungy's champion pool and which one he's going to choose, basically. Is it like the Yasuo? Is it going to be the Ari that he has been known to play? Or does he just play the Karma that's already there?
I would love to see something creative in that nature because, you know, we touched on it briefly before in the last game there with Spawn as to, you know, get yourself a strong, solid composition which can find priority, which can look to really try and punish, and you can look to dissuade any aggression shown by your opponents. And if we have a roaming style mid laner, well, hey, you're always looking at numbers advantages being found in the river. Strong objective control, strong early game control, and hopefully a Caitlyn that can find success before a cull is completed.
Right now it does look like, at least in Direwolf's mind, it's going to be the Karma in mid lane. You know, they've picked the Nautilus, they banned the Morgana. They're actually going to ban one champion from each respective role that the Karma could be flexing towards to try and dissuade, you know, the best options, let's say. So it's the Kai'Sa Nautilus. They've gotten rid of the hard counter of the Morgana in bottom lane to maybe force the Karma to go down to bot. And then they got rid of the Ari, one of the most comfortable champions of Chungy. If he goes the Yasuo here into a Nautilus, it's a little bit harder to operate effectively as well. And Azir can get through your wind wall with relative ease because he just puts a soldier behind it anyway. So maybe not ideal matchups here for mid lane.
I'm quite curious to see actually where did he decide to take the mid lane as that stands, because right now we have seen that the Karma has been flexed in every single position. All players are very comfortable with it, be it top, mid, and the support role. Being played the most as a support. But the Lee Sin comes back, and I don't want to jinx it, but if we take a quick look at Miru's match history, there were 6 games in a row of Lee Sin, and he said, I'm going to change it up. Today, I've had one too many Weet-Bix. I feel like Trundle gameplay is what I'm going to be doing. And then he went back to Lee Sin here today. Yes, that derailed the point completely. That is the Xerath. Are we playing ARAM? What is happening here today, Rusty?
It's mid Xerath. So we had this, I swear we had this conversation last week actually on air. They must have been listening. The thing, so we could get into great depth on this as we get into the game anyway. That's most likely going to be the Xerath mid. That's now confirmed with the last champion here as well, of Mammoth going for that Thresh, which puts the Karma in top lane. It does look like a weird composition overall. You have to say that much looking at Mammoth. We'll wait to see how Direwolves choose to respond to this one, however, as we've got nothing but time to talk about the Xerath. Nothing but time.
Well, they're going to go for the Camille. That is their final pick here. Going to be the Chippy show once again of playing the side lanes and saying, we know what Mammoth want to do. They want to group. They want to play double support. They want to get in our face. They want to make sure that the Caitlyn can pop off in these 5v5 scenarios. We're not going to let that happen. We've got assassins, we've got dive, we've got pressure, and we can wait this game out. We don't have to force anything.
So if you're a viewer of the LEC, the European League of Legends that exists over there, you would have seen potentially Caps playing his mid lane AP Cogmore into Azir the first day that AP Cogmore got buffed. And it was wildly successful. It's the type of thing that made Azir almost an impossible blind pick because the Cogmore can just dominate that lane, right? And Chuggy is a different type of mid laner. I think we've established that already. He doesn't play the conventional champions. You know, one man's AP Cogmore is another man's Xerath. And that's basically the same logic that he's going to follow here, right? So the idea is Azir has a set range, which is mid to long range. And Xerath has a set range, which is long to extremely long range. And if you can outrange your opponent and push them in, you're going to control the Azir. You're going to prevent him from being able to execute his champion in general. you're going to have a very good time with your mid lane priority to help enable your jungler make plays around the map, just with free priority from that mid lane. And it's worth pointing out, mid lane priority is just invaluable. So I like the pick if they're able to execute it. And we know Chuggy's got his weird champion, so maybe he does have the Xerath there as well.
He certainly does. I mean, this is a guy that we keep harping on about week on week that doesn't like to conform to what is the go-to, likes to showcase that he can do anything he wants. And there is more to banning away the Heimerdinger on the side of Mammoth. My question is, though, this is a comp that looks to be quite vacant in the tanky department. Yes, we know that Graves can be quite tanky if he gets the ball running there with his grip. We know that the Karma can potentially go in for a very tanky build as well if it goes Grasp, but you're not going to be anywhere near that of rivaling what your opponents have. The sustainability and durability factor that the Direwolves bring to the table.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to have the Nautilus running around being a super tank. You don't have any Gargoyle Stoneplate builders, I think is generally the rule of thumb for is there a tank right now on the side of Mammoth. In saying that, they are playing the game through their increased range and mobility that a Karma will provide. So the Graves is a pretty short range, can be tanking champion like you mentioned. Put a Karma there and suddenly it's just a lot better pick in general, and they'll have a good 2v2. But when you put the Caitlyn and the Xerath on the same screen, suddenly their composition becomes really dangerous because they will just outrange their opponents at all times as long as they avoid being engaged on. The one really good ban from the Direwolves here, Skimmy, was that Morgana ban because that could have saved the day against the Nautilus engage, against potentially the Camille as well as the Azir. So if they're able to find it, which they have a comp that can, then I think the Direwolves will be fine.
And I think we have our question answered in what kind of Karma we're going to get. There is the Summon Airy, and last time he played this was actually into Swiper playing Scion. And he ran the likes of a Ludens, a Fiends, and a Shirelius. So very much a hybrid of a little bit of AP, but primarily support. And I think it really facilitates the point that you mentioned. You know, we want to utilize range. We want to bank on the fact that if we can buff up the likes of a Xerath and a Caitlyn, you're going to be too low by the time you get frustrated to force those fights. The question back towards that, though, is what if Direwolves just never go for the 5v5?
I don't think they can do that. You know, can Direwolves split push their way to a victory? Is a maybe. The way that this game would start to pan out is side lane could be a very big threat from Chippy. So, I think they want a 5v5 still, Skibby, and I don't know if they could just actively avoid it. But at a certain point, and if Chippy's in particular gets very fed, then maybe they don't need to team fight, and that just kind of ruins the game plan here from Mammoth. But in general, Direwolves are a team that have succeeded through their team fighting. And I don't think they'll look to avoid their biggest strength to have Chippies just sit in that side lane anytime soon. And they've shown marked improvements towards wanting to bring Chippies to the fray. And Camille is a team fighting split pusher.
Yeah, Camille definitely does it all. We've got a few champions that can be quite annoying like it. The Fiora springs to mind most notably. But my attention definitely has to be shown here to the bottom lane right now. What we can sort of see take place, typically when we've had the likes of a Caitlyn being paired with a Senna or a Karma, anything that can be annoying, so the Caitlyn can primarily focus on farm, going for a little cheeky trade if it looks desirable, but allow the support to do all the harassing and zoning, especially when you're going into a kill threat matchup. But between the likes of a Fresh and a Nautilus, both going to be quite eager to kind of extract any kind of small advantage to keep this Caitlyn at bay.
Yeah, and Mboma's gone for the Fleet Footwork in this game as his major keystone rune instead of the Lethal Tempo. Bass about to say g'day to Mir, but nothing beyond just the chunk that he's going to see. And so not having the Lethal Tempo actually does reduce a lot of the trade threat that a Caitlyn can have. The Fleet Footwork is really good for the sustain and move speed, so perhaps he's worried. You know, that a Kai'Sa Nautilus will be super aggressive in that lane.
Yeah.
Or he just wants that extra movement speed and survivability outside of the laning phase against someone like a Camille.
Maybe funds the greater scheme of what they're looking to achieve mid to late with the extra range. Make sure that if they lock you down, very difficult for you to run away, even if you do decide to flash. We'll have to keep our tabs on that. But I want to take the attention back to mid and primarily to jungle as well. You know, we saw a big deal of success found here with Miru when he played the Lee Sin was babysitting this mid lane. You typically don't think of an Azir being the go-to in the early game. A couple of items online, a bit of CDR, a bit of attack speed, and suddenly a force to be reckoned with. But do we think the game plan will follow a similar trajectory, knowing that you're going into one of these long-range assassins in the Xerath?
I mean, we're definitely looking at Mir trying to at least protect his mid lane. The way that this lane would play out is Xerath wants to harass while pushing constantly. And if he's able to continue that control of mid, then you'll see what Bass did before on a larger scale, you know, looking for perhaps camps as well as the aggression. Will Mir camp mid lane Most likely. I don't know if he wants to go near top lane and force a 2v2 against the Graves Karma if that's the side of the map that they're playing. So you would expect him to be looking mid more than anywhere else. And if bot lane presents itself, then definitely would consider bot lane. When you got a Nautilus to set you up, definitely a lot of kill threat.
Certainly will be. And this is the strength that you're already starting to see here of these picks in particular. Weighs a ton of priority as the waves crash on in and force every single member of the Direwolves to stand firm underneath their turret and just do their best of CSing, which as it stands, they're doing a fantastic job. They're not falling behind at all. Question will be from Mammoth's perspective, how do you look to try and build up some form of momentum? What is your way of getting to that moment where you've got all that long range? Will we see a very passive affair? We're waiting for a couple of items. Will we see a bit of an explosive situation, kind of like this, where trades continue to be utilized well by Mammoth?
Yeah, so Mammoth saw the ward from Chippy's that he placed in Tribush there as well. Chippy's also saw him walking back, so they know that there's a ward either at Krugs or at Red Buff. And with all of that knowledge that they start to get of each other, you could see, first of all, Bass is going to be aggressive towards this Drake, even without knowing where the jungler of Direwolves is, because their bot side reset. But he also knows that there is not going to be a Lee Sin on the top side anytime soon, and that enables Liv to be super aggressive while Bass stays invisible. And you should see, from this point, the second that Drake is taken, Liv respect that fact that now their jungler is spotted on the map, and as you can see, he's going to choose to take that recall.
He's going to choose to go for that recall, and Miru, with that information of his own right now, is going to look to try and force a moment. The Empress Divide actually connects, despite Chungi flashing away. Miru so dangerously low in 1 HP. Lethal range. There's a shock, actually, to guarantee that one, but they do find themselves the first blood, and a much-needed one between the mid-jungle link-up.
Yeah, nice play there from Shock, and Mir somehow hitting that miraculous Q, it felt like, but Chungi's flash, tragic. Still gets caught by the Azir ultimate, still gets pushed into the fray, and perfect calculations there, it's worth saying, from the Direwolves to get out with their lives while still getting that trade. If they didn't get Chungi, he presses R, he turns around and just starts to blast them, and that's a big risk, so they'll be very glad that they did get the frag and got out.
Absolutely, and a volatile matchup. We wondered if it would be the case, and it was. And a big window of their success can be found through this mid lane to open up the map and facilitate the other players to do what they do best, which is be quite aggressive. We tend to see the likes of Vital and Decoy, when they find themselves in a matchup like this, perform at the best. But based on how Chippy's itemizes and how his lane state goes, could see some very fun interactions where he teleports in, finds himself a key target, and makes it a show worth 5v5ing.
Yeah, this is a very early swap coming out of Mammoth. Again, like objective-wise, it is something that makes sense, right? You're always going to flip for the Herald when it's up and available. And I was thinking about this last game, but there's definitely times where you're playing the Caitlyn-style composition. You'd be very happy to just trade turret plates for the Herald control, if you're able to continue to control that 2v2 outright. But it does seem that their priority right now, Mammoth, is going to be towards the objective itself. And look for the potential turret plates that comes from taking Herald. You know, they've got their mid laner now starting to hover top side. Their jungler's there, and with the very early rotation of Liv to bot lane, he's going to be able to walk up freely, not use that teleport, and give a bit more tempo for the side of Mammoth. So unlikely that this would be a contested objective without the teleport from Chippies, which is an advantage that Mammoth now have.
I'm glad you raised that point about the Caitlyn swaps, because I'm pretty sure every single time we saw the Caitlyn, it was without a doubt them to be the first team to ever get the first turret, because they went for those exact plays. But no, they want more, and they will find it, as they guarantee themselves not only the first dragon, but the first Herald as well. With this Herald, might be able to find that first turret as a result anyway. We'll see what they do with these lanes when they will go for that flip back. But as it stands, 8 minutes on the clock. But would actually be Mammoth behind in gold.
I mentioned this earlier today, Skimmy, but the Chiefs lane swap was something that felt forced and not ideal, you know, in the way that they timed it. It worked out nicely for them in the end, but that was more so a product of their opponent's decisions, right, than of their own. They just swapped. And Mammoth actually did a very good swap here, and a hook's on.
Decoy seizing the opportunity. Both junglers going to rock up to the fun right now. Mr. Miru does not miss those. But neither does Bass there with his ultimate as well, as they both connect and both find a 1-for-1 trade. The supports are out, but the biggest casualty is the fact that Caitlyn is gone. Vital flashing forward finds one, guarantee himself another. And what would have been a false play from Bass to drop the Herald down top, well, completely punished, as Direwolves now find themselves 4 kills.
Yeah, just absolutely read like a book there. Direwolves, Mir's in the correct area. The hook and engage is on at the same time as Graves looking to sneak into top lane. So they had a read on exactly where Mammoth wanted to be. They bested them in the skirmish quite handily there as well. And they completely thwart any kind of Herald play that would have came about. You know, they are going to be able to catch that wave. And Boma will get back in time and will have a CS advantage. But that's not them keeping tempo anymore, Mammoth. While it was a good Herald take, that's not the turret plates. That's not the gold that you want to see from them. That is one of the risks.
Certainly is one of the risks, and you can see what the payoff is as a result. You've accelerated your Lee Sin by 800. That's a major component. And your AD carry and Vital can only be up a couple of hundred, but definitely one on his way to now making a case of out-trading when we talk about the variation in builds between Mana Mune and a crit itemization. See the attention shown back topside again. Can be stubborn in their attempts to take this one down. Best pathing up topside, still has that Herald bear in mind, so we'll be looking for an opportunity to deploy, and seems to be that second time may just be the charm.
Yeah, we'll see if he chooses to summon straight away. This will be close to just the turret falling. Direwolves are clearly respecting here, you know, fully aware that Bass could be in the area. And of course he is now. So with this turret take, it is going to be the first turret of the game going the way of Mammoth. It'll be shared gold between Bass and Boma and Artek, actually. So they are going to give it to all three members. And I think it's just about timing for them, right? Because they know that on the other side of the map, Direwolves could be doing the Drake. They've just hit it. They're going to look potentially for this second charge. They're actually going to let it go. They might have been able to force that forward into the turret for the second charge if they knew that Direwolves were at the Drake. Interesting that they didn't. They'll choose Krugs instead.
Yep.
And maybe mid.
Gone for the Krugs. Now they wrap around through to mid. They're going to steal away those Raptors as well, because why not? The jungle belongs to us. And the map turns red, as we are now playing for an Infernal Soul, an explosive game, much like the last one. You can see tons and tons of extra damage. I'm sure Mammoth are licking their lips with joy right now, thinking, we've got a Caitlyn, we've got a Xerath with a buff like that as well. Oh, GGEZ surely has to be their motto at that stage.
I mean, yeah, if you get the Infernal Soul onto Mammoth's composition, you're going to be nasty to deal with. And we also just saw them actually group up onto the same screen, Skimmy, so a small glimpse in what is possible from them. Oh, they haven't got their items yet, so that's one of the things that we'll definitely have to look for here with Mammoth, is that first Luden's Echo completion will be nice. He's got level 9 now as well, so that's a consideration. Caitlyn with that Infinity Edge starts to ramp up in damage as well. Those are two really important breakpoints that we're waiting to see from Mammoth before they meaningfully want to group up and start to siege with their range advantage that they would have.
Draws a little bit of parallels to when the Chiefs drafted a comp where it had 5 ranged. I believe that game went the distance of about 35 minutes. Obviously, you had the Kayle as a big benefactor of waiting. I wonder if we're going to have a situation here as well. It seems to be the case of once that first item spike comes online, look to sniff out a few more opportunities of trades that could go your way. There's the Stormrazor, there's Luden's Echo, you highlighted it before. That's a big talking point now, so they can try and group around this Karma as well. There is a very real possibility of them not being vulnerable to the likes of the hard engage that Direwolves have at their disposal.
Well, he did go Stormrazor, like you mentioned. I was expecting perhaps more of the Infinity Edge build, but Stormrazor, so he's got the movement speed from his fleet footwork. He's got the slow that comes out of the Stormrazor there as well. A little bit more augmentation on the battlefield. Is going to be not a bad thing by any means. And while we're looking at their items, we also need to look at their respective opponents here, because a Trinity Force for Chippies against Karma in that side lane is going to be very difficult to deal with when that is complete. And Karma's actually gone for what looks like the nuke build right now, that Lost Chapter.
Yeah, Lost Chapter. I believe, what we saw from him last time was, the Luden's Echo was the sole standard mage AP item, and then from that point onwards, he went into the support tech with the Athenes as well as just Shurelias. So whether or not he's going to follow a similar game path here today, it's really going to be quite dependent on how Direwolves look to set themselves up. Trinity Force is there for Chippy's Camille. A major power spike for that character in particular. Get to see exactly how he decides to group up and utilize it if he does now think, okay, time to fight. I've got enough power to use at our disposal. Bear in mind, Shock is still waiting for that Lost Chapter to be evolved, and Vital quite content, no doubt, waiting for the Muramana to come on through.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually... We have a 2-0-2 Lee Sin on the side of the Direwolves, and it feels like he's the only one having that massive impact just yet. Decoy definitely has been struggling a little bit. You can see he got chunked out pretty heavily just before they even considered going to the river for Rift Herald number 2. Do they even contest this? As once again, Mammoth are so ready to take this objective. They have grouped their Karma up perfectly timed once again. A free objective taken. You aren't really seeing any contests from the Direwolves, and I think in part it might just be because they're very comfortable to say, well, we scale fine. Why would we not wait to get our first full item spikes on someone like the Azir? Because keep in mind, his spike is delayed 1,300 gold at a minimum.
Yeah.
Right? Because all Azirs go for that lost chapter before they finish the Nash's Tooth. Where the Xerath, who has also got his magical footwear, so even easier for him to purchase those items, just wants to rush the Ludens. So they were definitely stronger, you know, if a fight were to happen immediately there.
And definitely Mammoth playing around their win conditions as well. You know, get some strong zonal control, utilize that range to good effect, zone away Decoy there, and it's a 4v5, and Dive will say, you know what, it's okay. We'll concede away another Herald. We're quite happy to sacrifice what it may present. Obviously, they won't know where the gold is at right now, but fast approaching 60 minutes, it is still dead even at 26k.
I have no doubts in my mind Mammoth will be happy with an even map state. You mentioned it earlier, Skimmy. The last time these two teams faced was a 24-minute smashing. So definitely not going in the same trajectory just yet.
Definitely isn't. There goes the right of the Arcane being chucked on through, just to zone people out once more. And maybe Decoy has a bounty on his head, because he seems to be the focus every single time. Blast cones himself back into safety. And he can go for a recall. But same story. Use the Herald, use the range, and guarantee yourself a back-to-back objectives. And it's when you start to say, well, how do they patch themselves to those new items? How can they ensure the likes of Azir and Kaiser get strong? Well, Chippies with that Trinity Force is putting in work in those side lanes.
Yeah, he's got his earlier item spike timing here. He's going to be able to take a side lane turret. Losing the mid lane outer is actually really valuable, though, here for Mammoth in particular. To be able to get more control in the jungle. Have more control than in those side lanes as a result through vision control. You can see Bass working well with Artec right now. They'll get themselves the up-tempo trade here as a result of that Herald. Still well and truly looking very good in this game is Mammoth. Was waiting to see that real first step from the Direwolves, because as it stands, Decoy constantly being harassed, not having the chance to throw a spell out and connect it, does mean that he's never going to get the Aftershock procs. It is surprisingly squishy. That continues until he finds the engage.
Certainly will do. And with the absence of a stone plate as well, as he waits for that to come online, just adds extra fuel to the fire of the aggression and anger of, well, I'm essentially a walking ward at the state of the map. GLP has come on through, actually, so they've just juked us all. Lived. Not going to go for the Ludens here today. No, wants more control, more lockdown. And I suppose really what this guarantees, much like the Storm Rays of the Fleet footwork, it's all about holding your opponent at arm's length, using your range, making sure that you're protected.
Yeah, definitely. And I do expect from here he'll go the more supportive build. You've got your Caitlyn AD carry. I would be shocked if he doesn't go for the Athenes and the Ardent Sensor. Probably from this point onwards. You'll also start to see, and this is one of the things where Direwolves may have an advantage in this game, is if Liv does go the supportive itemization choices, that means he wants to be grouped with Caitlyn most of the time, right? He wants to be grouped with his team most of the time. But they don't have someone that deals with chippies. So that's where I'm wondering, you know, if he actually does commit to that support itemization, or if his role in this game is just to withstand chippies and wave clear. And that's one of those things where maybe a Ludens would be better, right? You've just got free Ludens procs on minion waves, makes clearing waves a lot easier for longer in the game. GLP makes me think he wants to group.
He wants to group, but what do Direwolves want to do at this stage is, they won't know it, but they are actually just standing on a ward at the moment, as they have been stuck in mid for quite a long time now, pushing it in with Vital, the main benefactor, hoovering up all that CS as he finds himself a very small advantage over Caitlyn and must be sitting on a ton of gold as Mboma has just now picked up the rapid fire cannon to continue the harassment and the anger issues, I suppose, really, of what this Caitlyn can really present, especially with a red buff, Rusty.
Yeah, she's going to be a real nuisance with a rapid fire cannon and a red buff. Not only does it have increased range, you get slowed for longer. And she has the health regeneration, of course, that comes from that one. So it does mean it's pretty hard to poke her out, but we already know that. We know that Direwolves will be looking for their hard engages if they are to look for fights at all. Still waiting for Shock to get his first major item spike. The one big difference here between both teams yet again, where you've got 2 items completed for Vital. We're still waiting on 1 for Shock. I don't think they would ever consider looking for a 5v5 or a grouped up fight without those spikes coming across. But if you have Vital as strong as he currently is, you could still consider those skirmishes. Your Lee Sin is still 2-0-2.
Certainly could, and as we saw before, they definitely aren't afraid to utilize their mechanical prowess there, and even when your opponent burns their flash, still somehow take you out and guarantee that kill in the mid lane. Now I see that the gold has been spent, so you have to imagine the item spike is there. Nope, not going to go for the Loons, instead going to go for the Nashers. Yep. Another big power spike, obviously, in its own right. And this is when the Azir starts to feel pretty meaty when those Sand Soldiers are up and running.
I think it's all around objectives though, right? If you're looking at a Xerath in mid lane, you're not going to win that trade. Most of the time here, Direwolves are going to plant their Kai'Sa in mid and just look to survive the Xerath throwing spells every 3 seconds. Objectives is the name of the game here for this Azir. You know, got the spikes, look for the objectives, then you can hit the big swoop, throw them all into your team and hit the engage that your team needs. At the same time, so while we're looking at Direwolves control the river right now, and we do get to challenge Mammoth and see how they get in, the longer you wait, the longer it is that Chippies gets to sit in that side lane and start to threaten turrets.
And that has to be the talking point, right? The fact that he's now just gone back, picked up that Ravenous Hydra. Very hard to bully him out this lane now, is it, for the Karma that will be matching. It has actually sacrificed a fair bit of CS when forced to group up and contest and ensure that these objectives have gone their way. Bear in mind, it's the first 2 Dragons, the first 2 Heralds that Mammoth picked up. But now the Direwolves have said, enough is enough. Power spikes are there. It is time for us to get some kills. Killer Instinct guarantees it as everybody comes together and hits the high 5. A 5-man squad now looking to put themselves on 2 Dragons as well.
Yeah, and it seems the answer to our question on how will Mammoth deal with not having vision control is throw your Graves into it and see if it works. Smite going to be missing here. So there's definitely no way that they were going to be looking to contest that one. You generally would be more content throwing spells in the bushes, you know. If you had Chungy nearby, throw a Xerath Q at it, perhaps. That's a bit longer range than a Graves Ward. So really just giving the Drake, giving the kill over.
Giving the kill over, and it's to this man once again on your screen, the big man known as Meru. Another Lee Sin performance, another really good early to mid-game transition, you know. He's one of very few that just seems to religiously play this pick, but just never look like he's behind and have any sort of question marks of like, why is he going for a Black Cleaver? He feels so far behind right now, he should be playing a little bit more supportive. This is a guy that, much like Chippies, wants to find a target and ensure you fall on down.
And this is a good Black Cleaver game as well. He's got the Kai'Sa. He's also got the Camille in the side lane. So if he ever starts to pull off the Mir special, which is go to where Chippies is, then you will probably see some serious damage coming out of those 2 in tandem now. Probably going to be a very simple 2v2 skirmish for them, considering how far ahead they are of their opponents. It's also running the FPX skin.
Well, I mean, the FPX skin is always the icing on the cake.
That's the worst one. You know why?
Why's that?
Because every time you auto attack, you make slapping noises like you're in a Jackie Chan movie, you know? Every auto attack, Skibby.
We like to call that immersion factor. You know, chuck on a VR headset and feel the character become one and hit the highest rank on that ladder, which I'm sure Shock has done on multiple occasions. The man is a bit of a machine in his own right, but what I was going to say is the fact that we've now got all these power spikes here. The Muramana finally evolved, finally there for Vital to utilize. 23 minutes in, we're starting to see a bit of daylight between these two in terms of economy as Direwolves start to build up a 1k lead.
Yeah, Direwolves are in a good spot. I just wonder if they continue to allow this Caitlyn to hit the 3-item spike, if it makes too much of a difference that, you know, a Kai'Sa will have 3.5 or 4 items. Because the Caitlyn's still going to be big. The Karma grouped is all it really takes for that to be enabled as well. And we've already highlighted this a few times, but can Direwolves play their comp if Mammoth is set up in advance? We've seen that when Mammoth have a plan and they have a strategy, they're able to execute it decently well. And a lot of that is actually banked on them being in the area first. So that's a lot of the game that we're probably going to continue to see here, is if Direwolves seem to set themselves up in an area first, Mammoth struggle. Because Direwolves definitely want to be going towards Mammoth, and Mammoth want Direwolves to be coming towards them. If Mammoth face check, they tend to lose.
And the question has to be then, when Direwolves do find themselves in control of the river, who actually face checks on the side of Mammoth? This is the vacation of not having, a true tank. You haven't gone for the Grasp, Frozen Heart, tanky variation, Frozen Fist, whatever you want for this Karma. So are you just endlessly chucking out skill shots and banking on the fact that, you can harass them off, and that's enough to, shoot into the dark, if you will?
Yeah, that's it, right? He's not gone full tank. He is still looking what presumably will be a Zhonya's next, get some armor against a Camille. Not honestly too sold on this Karma existing in its current state. Not providing anything massive. I think what happened here for Mammoth, as you can see, just being ignored is lived. I think what happened is that they picked the Karma and then decided it was more valuable to play the Thresh. And they've just wound up with like lived, but you've got to just deal with the cards you've been dealt. Even in saying that, right, like I don't think this might be the optimal build or anything. I think he's just in a rock and a hard place. Wave clear is your best friend in whatever form that comes in. Most likely is your option here, because you're just going to be sitting under your turret for the rest of the game. And the faster you clear minions, the longer your turrets stay alive.
And look, it's got to the point in the game right now with a level 16 Camille. Karma can't match it, not with this build especially. As now going for the Zhonyas, sitting on the Merc Treads as well, so definitely wants to be a battle mage there to support the team and group up. But they're just having to sacrifice so much as a result. Chippies now takes another outer turret, and it's just opening up this map to say, well, if you want to continue to group up for these fights, if you want to keep contesting objectives, well, if you're unable to win that because we get to there first, well, I'm also taking this too, so it's a victory on two different fronts.
There's a big Krug Goblin down here as well, so starting to amass a pretty sizable CS difference actually between these top laners. Drake's in 15 seconds. Camille hasn't reset. Will probably have a lot to purchase here as well. Mammoth can surely just walk in as they are right now, knowing that Camille needed to reset. Throw Xerath spells at them. Throw everything. Give me something to talk about. That's...
Resident Sleeper gameplay is what you're trying to get at there, Rusty, and I don't blame you. We're going to see exactly what happens. As there's a hook, there's a kill target. As both the supports get a little bit aggressive, a little bit rowdy. Ultimate gets chucked on out just before Decoy falls on down, and Arctic, the Soul Goblin, laughs himself straight back into that one. As out go to skill shots, flinging them flying from mid lane. Vital's got his dancing shoes on, and will stay topped up at 100%. Still, both teams not willing to commit to this dragon, but it will be the Direwolves that have themselves in a strong position holding the river.
Yeah, they're pretty terrified of the Chippies flank. So now Mammoth, they'll get a little bit of confidence about themselves. They are going to push forwards and at least start this, but they still, as you can tell, have a lot of respect for the whereabouts of this Camille. They don't have a smite advantage by any means here. It looks like it might just be the 50-50.
50-50, will it be? No, Bass picks it up. Thank you very much. Miru jumps on in. Locked in stasis mid-animation, gets caught by a trap, stunned and shut down. Best case scenario, but there it is. He's hit the mark. Does he go for the killer instinct? I'm sure he's really keen to hit that button, but knows it is imminent death. And Doom would be presented as there were multiple members swarming around him to protect.
Yeah, and he may get a 150 gold bounty and shut down Skibby, but he's worth a 400 gold bounty himself. Probably not worth throwing yourselves at your opponents for that one. Unfortunately, with the Drake being up when it was, Decoy's untimely death there looking for an engage costs Direwolves the objective, and then as such also costs Mir his life when he was looking to contest that one, as they get a little bit over-aggressive on the back end of the Drake trade. Very weird game so far, if I'm going to be honest with you. It's incredibly passive, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But when we're looking for the fights themselves, they've really been missing the mark, That's the weird thing about this game.
Well, it feels for the Direwolves a mix of what's worked for them in recent weeks of past, but with a splash of split one chippies. Back on a split pushing champion, back on a playstyle where funnel the CS into me. He's up there in the 300s now. Only 1 of 3 right now in this game, next to that of the AD carries themselves. But he's consistently throwing Mammoth these conditions and curveballs of, well, if you want to group up for this, you're going to lose an inhibitor. If you want to go for that objective, I'm going to take an inhibitor.
Lived has decided as a third item he is going to go towards the Athene's Unholy Grail. He's going to start building a little bit more supportive, and I don't mind that if he's able to survive his laning phase with the 2 items that he has in the Zonia's Hourglass and the GLP 800. Team fighting is going to become much more of a prevalent issue. Mammoth are going to probably start looking towards obviously in 3 minutes, right, they're staring down the Infernal Soul point, which is huge for them. So if he's able to get enough money before that, he'll be laughing. Until such a point, however, we're still looking at a Death's Dance Chippies on the other side. No chance of dealing with him in a one-on-one. Especially with Athene's giving magic resistance and no HP for him, right? He's going to be on struggle street from this point onwards. Chippies wins the game. If he's unleashed in a side lane by himself, he just wins the game.
With these items, I mean, this is what a Camille lives for, really. It's what gets a Camille excited to play top lane, is these items. At which point, very difficult for anybody to challenge you. And I got excited only moments prior there, Rusty, because I saw that we were up by 1k gold, and I thought maybe that is the catalyst to something explosive and exciting happening. But, we're still here. We are still locked in at a 1k difference. And it's still anybody's guess as to who will come out ahead when it comes to soul points. We're just seeing a lot of Infernal buffs come on through.
There's a lot of damage in this game, and there is some tankiness there. Both supports are going to have the Gargoyle Stone Plate, so I did misspeak earlier when I said no one would. Thresh does build it. Still really waiting for something to give here, right? And we've already spoken at length about what it could be, but there has been different ways of getting there, I suppose, is one way to look at it. Chippies has spent the last minute of his game looking around mid lane, grouping up, and I don't blame him. The way that Vital is currently fed out of his mind with farm, he has the potential to 1v9 his way through a game if he is just supported. And we've already spoken about the fact that Camille can be considered a pretty powerful team fight champion, not just a split pusher. That's one of the biggest strengths of Camille in general. So looking for something to come from that in mid lane just before. And he can't sit bottom too freely, right? Baron's the only objective currently up and available, so you'd expect Chippies can sit in bot lane by himself, but I don't know if they wanted to force the Baron too hard as Artek.
Well, he wants to sit in the bot lane, and he wants to find something, because he's had a guts for it. He will finally find one, and it is going to be Artek, and despite the skill shots coming out to assist their fallen support player, it is not enough. The 1v1 will take place, and there was a teleport if need be, should Mammoth decide to throw attention towards the Baron. So that's a kill, that's a pick, and that's a big bounty now starting to accrue on Chippy's head. Sitting at 350, but you saw in moments prior, Mammoth struggling really to do much in the mid lane because the amount of cooldown reduction that Vital has, that he's just able to chuck out his W on like a 5 to 6 second cooldown.
Yeah, if he hits, it's a lot lower as well. Have we seen at any moment in this game the Caitlyn and the Xerath on the same screen controlling a lane? We haven't seen them do anything together. We've seen them standing there a lot. But it feels like the Kais has been poking more than they have. That means they're not being able to play their composition out in the way that they are intending by any means. They're already looking to concede another Drake, so we are just going to have the Infernal Drake to end all Infernal Drakes with the next one that spawns, because it has to be a soul for someone. And one mistake has cost 2 consecutive Drakes in a row going the other way.
I think that's exactly what Mammoth will be banking on right now. We talked about how strong it would be in their pockets, and we know exactly that's what they want to contest and go for. They need to find the optimal situation, you have to say, for them to look to contest it. And it has been a bit of a sore point, as we've seen in these last 15, that if they aren't the first one to that river, very hard for them to push on in or find the ability to utilize what their comp is built for. They will find themselves mid-prior and say, okay, you can take the dragon. We are going to go to the Baron.
Yeah, it feels like they were calling a bluff here. Maybe Chippies continues to push. Either way, he's going back to base. Teleport is available for him, and Direwolves know that this has been started. This could just become a 50-50. Mira's on the back of the pit.
Oh my gosh, look how quickly Nautilus fell on down. There's the Plasma, and there's the Killer Instinct in as Vital gets himself a huge shield. Chippy's on the flank! Look at the Hextech ultimatum! He got evaporated! Direwolves are angered. They've had enough. They hit the shutdown switch and they turn it off. And there is a 34-minute ace.
Yeah, Chippies just comes in and says, I'm sick of this, let's do it. You've got the Kaiser ultimate in as well from Vital. And kind of what you would expect, right, coming out of the carries of the Direwolves. They start to hit their stride in team fighting, and they effectively do that in a 4v5. Because Decoy is definitely having a bit of a shocker at this one, and dies before the action could even start. We'll get to see this again, of course. The hook from Artek into a Caitlyn trap. It's a hard life to be the Nautilus. You've got the Kai'Sa to come in to follow, so the ultimate is gone. And this is all about Chippies as he comes in and just blasts, dodges the Xerath stun, flashes over the wall, and allows himself to cycle all of his spells while Shock and Vital aggressively go in to cement the rest of the fight.
And that has to be the biggest sort of takeaway from that fight, right? The fact that, yes, Mammoth are built for range and they can destroy, tanks, be it the Nautilus, but just the amount of pressure and mobility that the Direwolves showcased there. The fact that Chippies could juggle in and out as he flashed off for that first initial pick and did not make it easy and lined up for Xerath to really pat everybody on down. And once they're on top of your head, yep, that range really accounts for nothing, despite how many items they had online at that stage of the game. I mean, look at Boma right now, nearly at full items.
Shock.
It just doesn't mean anything at this stage of the game. They've lost all form of tempo. They're just getting smacked.
Yeah, two Direwolves sitting in a bush, one tap their opponents. That's just the damage that Shock's able to do right now. Quietly found himself 2.5 items, or 2 and 7 million components as Chippies. Here we go again.
Stagger death timers, but full mechanic prowess. Pick up the pick, and damage is fairly certain at this point that if we find you, there's very little chance for you to utilize that Karma Shield or a flash to get out of harm's way. We waited a bit, but we finally were rewarded with some chaotic action to close out things here at the 36-minute mark. It wasn't a 24-minute stomp, but it was an outcome that favored the Direwolves once again.
Yeah, it never really felt like they were in a position to lose that game there, Skim. At the end of the day, Mammoth just struggled to use the composition they had to try and build any kind of leads, any kind of advantages. They were kept at bay at all moments. They did manage to get themselves to 3 Drakes and threaten the Infernal Soul point, but we never even got to see the Infernal Soul. We just constantly saw picks before it even happened, and that was it, unfortunately, for Mammoth. Direwolves found a single team fight. Easy follow through to win.
Yeah, they said, you know what, we're not going to leave this to another 50-50 flip with Soul Point, good determiner, and we're not going to be frustrated by the fact that you're playing so passive and just keen to, sit at 1.5 meters distance. We've decided we're going in, we're taking a risk, and we're going to go for the jugular. And as it stands, congratulations to the Direwolves. They take out the 3rd game of the day, but to close out things for your Friday entertainment, after the break, it is going to be a big one, a banger, surely to close out the night. It's going to be Order taking on Pentanet.
Today is the NeoSurf Cup, and we're going to be playing against Misfits, so hopefully we can bring home the win.
NeoSurf is simple, safe, and secure. You can go to your local shop and get a voucher code and use it online, preferably to buy League of Legends skins.
It's got it! This is deadly! It's got it!
If you're craving the taste of your favourites, head to Macca's for a fast, safe and contactless drive-through experience. For your Macca's run, contact-free, we'll be here.